Alright guys, let's start. We're gonna be reading the next few pages of this book for 15 minutes. Let me put out a timer right here. Let me set up a timer. Timer for 15 minutes. Alright, we have our timer in place. For who all that are wondering what this tape is for, I was trying out to put bobby pins around these two areas so I can use it as a lavalier mic, but as you can see we failed miserably and this is what happened. So yeah, we are gonna use it this how. Let's start with enunciating all the words that we read in this book. Let's start. For whoever who is new to this video or to our day 2 of enunciating words while reading a book, this is a book named Never Split the Difference. It is for negotiating and learning about negotiations. Let's start. Alright, I haven't started the timer yet, so let's start. Okay. Alright, let me put it like this so you can have a visual effect or that we are actually reading it from this book, right? But why did they work? That was the question that drew me to Harvard, to that office with Mnuchin and Blum. I lacked confidence outside my narrow world. Most of all, I needed to articulate my knowledge and learn how to combine it with theirs. And they clearly had some, so I could understand, systemize, and expand it. Yes, our techniques clearly worked with mercenaries, drug dealers, terrorists, and brutal killers, but I wondered, what about with normal humans? As I'd soon discover in the storied halls of Harvard, our techniques made great sense intellectually and they worked everywhere. It turned out that our approach to negotiation held the keys to unlock profitable human interactions. In every domain and every interaction and every relationship in life. This book is how it works. The smartest dumb guy in the room. To answer my questions a year later in 2006, I talked my way into Harvard Law School's winter negotiation course. Let me put it to mute so you guys don't get that much disturbed with it. Alright, let's start. It was filled with brilliant Harvard students getting law and business degrees and hotshot students from other top Boston universities like the Massachusetts Institute of technology, and toughs. The Olympic trials for negotiating, and I was the only outsider. The first day of the course, all 144 of us piled into a lecture hall for an introduction, and then we split into four groups, each led by a negotiation instructor. After we'd had a chat with our negotiator instructor, mine was named Sheila Heen, and she's a good buddy to this day. We were partnered off in Paris and sent into mock negotiations. Simple. One of us was selling a product, the other was the buyer, and each had clear limits on the price they could take. My counterpart was languid red hand named Andy, a pseudonym, one of those guys who wear their intellectual superiority like they wear their khakis with relaxed confidence, and he and I went into an empty classroom outlooking one of those English style squares on Harvard's campus, and we each used the tools we had. Andy would throw out an offer and give a rationally airtight explanation for why it was a good one. An inescapable logic trap. And I'd answer with some variation of how I am supposed to do that. We did this a bunch of times until we got to a final figure. When we left, I was happy. I thought I'd done pretty well for a dumb guy. After we all regrouped in the classroom, Sheila went around the students and asked what price each group had agreed on, and then wrote the result on the board. Finally, it was my turn. Chris, how did you do with Andy? She asked. How much did you get? I'll never forget Sheila's expression when I told her what Andy had agreed to pay. Her whole face first went red as if she couldn't breathe, and then out popped a little strangled gasp like a baby bird's hungry cry. Finally, she started to laugh and squirmed. You got literally every dime he had, she said, and in his brief, he was supposed to hold a quarter of it back in reverse for future work. Andy sank deep in his chair. The next day, the same thing happened with another partner. I absolutely destroyed the guy's budget. It didn't make sense. A lucky one off was one thing, but this was a pattern. With my old school experiential knowledge, I was killing guys who knew every cutting edge trick you could find in a book. The thing was, it was the cutting edge techniques these guys were using that felt dated and old. I felt like a Roger Federer, and I had used a time machine to go back to the 1920s to play in a tournament of distinguished gentlemen who wore white pantsuits and used wood rackets and had part-time training regiments. There I was with my titanium alloy racket and dedicated personal trainer and computer strategized serve and volley plays. The guys I was playing were just as smart, actually more so, and we were basically playing the same game with the same rules. But I had skills they didn't. You are getting famous for your special style, Chris, Sheila said after I announced my second day's result. I smiled like Cheshire Cat. Winning was fun. It seems like all you do to these Harvard law students is saying, let me close that fan. It's gonna make a lot of noise. Alright guys, we are back to our reading. Let's go. Where were we? It seems like all you do is to these Harvard Law School students is say no and stare at them, and they fall apart. Is it really that easy? I knew what she meant. While I wasn't actually saying no, the question I kept asking sounded like it. Alright, where were we? Alright. They seemed to insinuate that the other side was being dishonest and unfair, and that was enough to make them falter and negotiate with themselves. Answering my calibrated questions demanded deep emotional strength and tactical psychological insights that the toolbox they'd been given did not contain. I shrugged. I'm just asking questions, I said. It's a passive aggressive approach. I just asked the same 3 or 4 open ended questions over and over and over and over. They get worn out answering and give me everything I want. This book is actually very interesting right now. Andy jumped in his seat as if he'd been stung by a bee. Stam, he said. That's what happened. I had no idea. By the time I'd finished my winter course at Harvard, I'd actually become friends with some of my fellow students, even with Andy. If my time at Harvard showed me anything, it was that we at the FBI had a lot to teach the world about negotiating. In my short stay, I realized that without a deep understanding of human psychology, without the acceptance we are all crazy, irrational, impulsive, emotionally driven animals, all the raw intelligence and mathematical logic in the world is little help in the fraught, shifting interplay of two people negotiating. Yes, perhaps we are the only animal that handles. We are done with our 15-minute timer, all right. What we have read so far and what I have understood while actually in, enunciating, my bad, I just forgot that word. Enunciating each word was Chris Voss, the author of this book, went to Harvard Law School to understand why negotiating, to learn negotiating, and he understood that even though he was the dumbest there, but he negotiated far much more better than them because he had the psychology that was used on terrorists and all these kidnappers, because he was before in FBI and he used these negotiation tactics on them before. And when he used the same tactics on these Harvard scholars, they faced issues answering him even though he questioned them the same thing again and again. And that's why he was becoming so popular. And the first task they got was they had to agree on a price that one person would pay to the other, and both are the students of the Harvard Law School. So that's what I have learned so far. It has been a great journey. Wait for the second part. We're going to use this pen in between our teeth to read it further. Let's go.